Abigail Harper had crossed 3 states to marry a man who claimed he valued character above beauty. But less than a minute after she stepped from the stagecoach, Thomas Reed looked at her body, turned cold, and rejected her before half the town. The laughter around her hurt, but the stranger watching from across the street frightened her more. He had not laughed. He had made a decision, and now he was walking straight toward her. It was July of 1886, in Harland Creek, Kansas. Abigail was 32 years old, and had spent much of her life hearing that she was too large for a woman. She wore a blue traveling dress she had sewn herself. Her dark hair was pinned beneath a dusty bonnet, and her only bag held everything she still owned. 6 months earlier, she had found Thomas Reed's advertisement in a St. Louis newspaper. He was a widowed rancher with 2 young sons, seeking a sensible wife who could help build a peaceful home. His final words had caught her heart. Character valued above all. Abigail had answered honestly. She told him she was a larger woman and had never been considered beautiful. She also told him that she could cook, manage money, keep records, and work harder than most men expected. Thomas replied that her appearance did not matter. Those words had changed everything. Abigail sold her mother's china, her father's watch, and the little writing desk she had loved since childhood. After paying for the journey, she arrived in Harland Creek with 1 bag, $43, and more hope than she dared show. Thomas stood near the general store when she stepped down. He matched the man described in his letters, tall, dark-haired, and going gray at the sides. But the warmth she had imagined was missing. His eyes moved slowly over her body, and his face tightened. "Miss Harper?" "Mr. Reed." She offered her hand. He touched it for barely a second. "You did not mention this," he said. Abigail's fingers closed around the handle of her bag. "I told you I was a larger woman. I wrote it plainly in my second letter." "I understood something different. You said it would not matter." Thomas glanced toward the men outside the store. He seemed more worried about their looks than the woman standing before him. "You are not what I expected," he said loudly. "I cannot marry you." One man laughed. Another whispered something that made 2 others grin. Abigail felt every pair of eyes upon her, but she would not give them her tears. "I came here in good faith," she said. "You knew who I was before I left St. Louis." Thomas lowered his eyes for one brief moment. "I am sorry you came this far." Then he walked away. Abigail stood beneath the burning sun while the town watched her. The next coach heading east would not arrive for 2 days. She did not know the price of a hotel room, but she knew $43 would not pay for both a room and the journey home. For the first time, she wondered if she had made a mistake too costly to survive. "Ma'am?" The voice came from behind her. It was deep and calm, without pity. Abigail turned and saw the stranger who had been watching. He looked about 40, with a sun-browned face, broad shoulders, and gray-green eyes. His clothes carried the dust of real ranch work. He stopped several feet away and removed his hat. "My name is Ethan Walker. I own a ranch 4 miles from town." Abigail held her bag closer. "What do you want, Mr. Walker?" "I heard what Reed said. So did everyone else." "Yes, ma'am." His eyes moved toward Thomas, who was disappearing around the corner. What he did was wrong. Abigail waited. Men often used kind words when they wanted something hidden behind them. Ethan did not step closer. "I have a spare room," he continued. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Dolan, lives at the ranch, so you would not be alone with me. My household records are a mess, and the place needs help. If you work for your room and meals until you decide what comes next, I would call it a fair trade." "Why would you offer that to a stranger?" "Because leaving you here after what happened would not sit right with me." She studied him, searching for hunger, mockery, or a trap. His face held none of them. "And if you are not the man you claim to be, Mrs. Dolan will bring you back to town herself." He reached for her bag but stopped before touching it. "Come with me, Miss Harper. You deserve more than being left alone in this street." Abigail looked toward the stage office, then at the men still watching from the store. She could wait 2 days and spend nearly everything she had, or trust a stranger whose silence felt safer than Thomas Reed's promises. "All right," she said. "I will come. Ethan lifted her bag into his wagon without making a show of helping her. Once they were outside town, he told her about the trouble with his ranch accounts. A feed company had charged him twice for one delivery, but he had been too busy to fight them. "Do you still have the bills?" Abigail asked. "Every one from the last 6 years." "Then they owe you money. A clear letter with copies of the records should settle it." Ethan looked at her for a moment. He did not laugh or question how a woman could know such things. "That is what my brother said," he replied. "I did not know how to begin." "I do." Those 2 words changed the way he looked at her. The Walker Ranch was worn but solid. A gray-haired woman named Mrs. Dolan welcomed Abigail with cold chicken, cornbread, and no foolish questions. Abigail was given a clean room with a window facing the open prairie. She sat on the bed long enough to feel the pain of everything she had lost. Then she washed her face, straightened her dress, and went downstairs to earn her place. That evening, she opened Ethan's ledger at the kitchen table. Within an hour, she found that his feed costs were far too high. By midnight, she had uncovered nearly $100 in hidden overcharges. Ethan sat across from her, watching as the woman Thomas Reed had rejected began saving his ranch on her very first night. But neither of them knew Thomas would soon hear what she had done. And when he returned, he would bring far more trouble than an apology. By sunrise, Abigail had found more than one mistake in Ethan Walker's account books. Hartwell and Sons had raised prices little by little, hiding each increase beneath confusing numbers. Over 2 years, they had taken more than $100 from the ranch. Abigail placed every bill in order and wrote a firm letter demanding the money back. "They will deny it," Ethan warned. "Then we will send the records to the Dodge City Merchants Board." He studied her across the kitchen table. Most men had questioned Abigail whenever she spoke with confidence. Ethan only listened. "Do what you think is right," he said. Those words gave her something Thomas Reed's letters never had: trust. Life at the ranch soon found a new rhythm. Ethan's sons watched Abigail with care. Marcus was 11 and carried himself like a much older boy. His mother had died 3 years earlier, and he did not welcome strangers. James was 9, quiet and curious, but too nervous to come close. Abigail never forced either boy to speak with her. One afternoon, she left warm cornbread covered with cinnamon sugar near James. She did not tell him it was his. She simply walked away. The bread disappeared within minutes. That evening, James found her in the kitchen. "Do you know how to play checkers?" he asked. "I do. Papa always beats me." "That is because you watch his hands instead of watching the board." James stared at her. "How did you know?" "Because everyone does it until they learn better." They played 3 games. James won the second one and looked so shocked that Ethan had to hide a laugh from the doorway. Marcus was harder to reach. Several mornings later, he found Abigail pulling weeds in the garden. "You are doing it wrong," he said. Abigail looked over her shoulder. "Then show me." Marcus seemed surprised that she had not become angry. He knelt beside her and worked his fingers deep into the dirt. "If you only pull the vine, the root stays," he explained. "Then it grows back." He slowly removed the whole root and held it up. "Your mother taught you that," Abigail said. Marcus's face changed. The garden was hers. Abigail did not tell him that she could replace his mother. She did not touch him or offer words he had not asked for. "A person needs something that belongs to them," she said. Marcus nodded. They worked beside each other until breakfast. When they left the garden, he held the gate open for her. 6 weeks after Abigail arrived, the Merchants Board ordered Hartwell and Sons to return $117, including interest. News spread through Harland Creek. The woman Thomas Reed had rejected was no longer spoken of, only because of her size. People began talking about what she had done. The Walker Ranch changed quickly. The bills were paid on time, wasted costs disappeared, and flowers returned to the front window. James followed Abigail through the kitchen with questions. Marcus began helping her in the garden each morning. Even Ethan changed. He started coming inside before sunset. He found small reasons to remain near the kitchen table while Abigail worked. Sometimes they discussed cattle prices. Sometimes they spoke about childhood memories. Other nights they sat quietly, but their silence felt warm. One evening, Ethan placed his coffee on the table and looked at her. "You have been good for my boys. They have been good for me. You were lonely before coming here." Abigail lowered her eyes to the ledger. "Most of my life." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Me too." Nothing more was said, but neither of them left the table for nearly an hour. On the next market day, Ethan invited Abigail to town. Marcus sat beside her in the wagon instead of riding in the back with James. "People will look at you," he warned. "I know. Does it bother you?" "It used to," she answered. "But when a person learns what she can do, other people's opinions become smaller." When they reached town, Marcus climbed down beside her and walked with his shoulders straight. Anyone watching could see that he had chosen which side he stood on. Ethan introduced Abigail as the woman helping him run the ranch. There was no shame or excuse in his voice. His respect was clear enough to stop most whispers. Then Abigail saw Thomas Reed outside the hotel. He approached with his hat in his hands. This time there was no disgust on his face. "I heard what you did with Hartwell and Sons," Thomas said. "It took real ability. It took careful records. I may have judged you too quickly." Abigail remembered the laughter on the day she arrived. She remembered standing alone with $43 while he walked away. "You judged what you could see," she said. "Now you have seen what I can do, and you have changed your mind. I would like to make things right. Perhaps we could have supper." "No," Thomas blinked. "You will not even consider it?" A man who changes his mind about a woman only after learning she is useful does not truly see her. He has only changed the value he places on her. Abigail walked away and joined Ethan at the wagon. During the ride home, Ethan asked what Thomas had wanted. His shoulders tightened when she told him. "What did you say?" "I told him no." "Why?" "Because he wants the woman who won the Hartwell case. He still does not want me." Ethan looked toward the road. "He is a fool." The quiet force in his voice stayed with Abigail long after they returned home, but Thomas did not accept her answer. Over the following days, he began telling people that Abigail was only staying with Ethan because she owed him. He said she had mistaken simple kindness for love. Then, on a Friday afternoon, Thomas rode to the Walker Ranch and offered Abigail marriage. She knew she would never become his wife, but one part of his offer struck a place she had tried to ignore. Thomas offered her a named position, a home of her own, and a future spoken plainly. Ethan had offered none of those things. "I need time to think," she told Thomas. When Thomas left, Ethan came around the side of the house. He had seen the visitor, and something guarded had entered his eyes. "He asked me to marry him," Abigail said. "What did you tell him?" "That I needed time, but not to think about Thomas." Ethan held her gaze. "Then what do you need to think about?" "You," she answered. "I need to know what you want. I will not build my future around another man's silence." Ethan stood before her without speaking. Then he removed his hat and stepped closer. "All right," he said. "Then it is time I told you the full truth." Ethan Walker looked at Abigail as if every quiet evening and every word left unspoken had brought him to this moment. "The truth is that I was not living before you came here," he said. "I worked, fed the boys, and kept the ranch standing. But most of me stopped living when Eleanor died." Abigail remained still. "Then you arrived," he continued. "Within 2 weeks, James was laughing again. Marcus was speaking about his mother. I started coming inside before dark, because I knew you would be sitting at that table." "Ethan, gratitude can feel like something it is not. I am grateful for what you have done, but I do not stay awake until midnight because I am grateful." He stepped closer and gently took her hand. "I love you, Abigail. Not only the woman who saved my money or repaired my home. I love the woman who works on a problem until she solves it. I love the woman who listened to my sons without trying to replace their mother. I love the woman who stood before Thomas Reed and refused to make herself smaller." Abigail's eyes filled, but she did not look away. "I take up more space than other women," she said. "Yes, you do. There was no concern in Ethan's voice. He spoke as if she had said the sky was blue. My no will always mean no. Good. I do not want a wife who gives herself away piece by piece. The word wife hung between them, even though he had not yet asked the question. I love you too, Abigail said. I have been afraid to admit it. I am afraid as well. That answer mattered more than any promise that fear would never come. The following morning, Abigail wrote Thomas a clear refusal. She thanked him for his offer and told him she would never become his wife. There was nothing in the letter he could twist into hope. Thomas received it 2 days later. By the end of that week, he had found another way to hurt her. Ethan returned from town carrying a notice from the Harland Creek Land Office. Thomas claimed that part of the Walker Ranch's eastern stream crossed land that belonged to him. If the claim was accepted, Ethan could lose access to the only steady water his cattle had during dry months. Without that stream, the ranch could be ruined. My father filed the original land papers in 1871, Ethan said. Are the records complete? Ethan hesitated. There was a transfer in 1878. The county recorder used the wrong form, and one page was never properly witnessed. Thomas had found the weakest point in the ranch records and pushed a knife into it. I need every land paper you own, Abigail said. Old maps, tax records, surveys, and letters. Bring me everything. They covered the kitchen table with papers and worked late into the night. The transfer from 1878 was weak enough to cause months of trouble. Abigail read it again and again, searching for something everyone else had missed. Shortly after midnight, she found an old survey folded inside a tax record. Ethan, look at this. The survey had been made in 1874, 4 years before the weak transfer. It showed that the stream boundary had already been marked by a large piece of stone called Saddle Rock. Is that rock still there? She asked. I rode past it yesterday. Then Thomas is fighting the wrong paper. The water rights were settled in 1874. The bad transfer came later and cannot change them. Relief moved across Ethan's face. Can you prove it? By tomorrow afternoon. They took the survey and the original deed to the county office in Millhaven. The deputy land commissioner, Gerald Potts, listened while Abigail explained the dates. When she finished, Potts gave her a thin smile. Your argument is strong, Miss Harper. However, Mr. Reed has provided a new statement from Frank Aldis, the man who made the 1874 survey. Potts placed a paper before her. The statement claims Saddle Rock had been marked in the wrong place. It carried Frank Aldis's name and had been signed only 10 days earlier. How old is Mr. Aldis? Abigail asked. 73. Was he questioned in this office? He is too ill to travel. Abigail examined the 2 witness names. They could not be read. Who witnessed his signature? Potts shifted in his chair. The names are there. The marks are there. The names are not. Ethan looked at her and understood. Potts had the Reed file open before they entered the room. He had been waiting for them. Abigail pushed the paper back. No action should be taken until Mr. Aldis is questioned by someone who has not been paid by Thomas Reed. Potts's face lost its smile. That is a serious claim. Then prove me wrong. Keep the water open until the statement is checked. Potts agreed, because refusing would have made his part too clear. Abigail and Ethan left the office and drove straight to the small town of Creed, where Frank Aldis lived with a caretaker named Harriet Moore. The old surveyor sat beside a window with a blanket over his knees. His body was weak, but his eyes became clear when Ethan mentioned Saddle Rock. 2 humps like a saddle, Frank said. I chose it because that stone was never going anywhere. Abigail showed him the new statement. Frank stared at his own name. A man brought me papers, he said. He told me they were a simple correction. My eyes are poor, and he did not read them to me. Did you ever say the boundary was wrong? No. Would you put that in a sworn statement? Frank's hands trembled, but his voice did not. Yes. I will not let a man use my name to steal land. Abigail wrote his words exactly. Frank signed them, and Harriet added her name as a witness. During the ride home, Ethan looked at Abigail with quiet wonder. You knew he had been tricked. I knew someone wanted us to believe a sick old man had suddenly changed a record he defended for 40 years. Ethan was silent for a moment. When this is finished, I want to ask you something properly. Are you trying to propose while driving a wagon back from a fraud case? It appears that I am. Ask again when the wagon is not moving. For the first time that day, Ethan smiled. On Monday morning, Abigail sent copies of Frank's statement to the county office, the state land office in Topeka, and the Dodge City newspaper. By Wednesday, Gerald Potts had removed himself from the case. The claim against the Walker Ranch began falling apart. Thomas Reed had lost his legal weapon. But he had not lost his anger. And when he learned Ethan planned to marry Abigail, Thomas chose one last place to attack them, in front of the entire town. The following Saturday evening, Marcus found Ethan and Abigail sitting at the kitchen table. He stood in the doorway with his arms folded. "Is Miss Harper going to become my stepmother?" Ethan nearly dropped his coffee. "That is a question for adults." "I am almost 12, Marcus replied. "James wants to know too, but he made me ask." Marcus turned toward Abigail. "Do you want to stay with us?" "I want to stay with your father, you, and James, for as long as you will have me." Marcus looked at Ethan. "Then stop doing that thing with your jaw and ask her." He turned and walked upstairs. Ethan stared after his son. He is not wrong. No, he is not. Ethan rose and stood across from Abigail. He did not kneel or give a grand speech. That was not the kind of man he was, and she did not want him to pretend. "I would like you to become my wife," he said. "Not because of the accounts, the garden, or the ranch. I want to marry you because this house has become your home, and because I love who I am when you are beside me." "You spoke to the boys?" "It is their home, too. I asked them first." "What did they say?" "Marcus said it was about time." James cried, "But he wants you to know it was happy crying." Abigail laughed as tears filled her eyes. "Yes, Ethan, I will marry you." He took her hands and held them between his own. Nothing else was needed. Their answer had been growing since the day he stepped away from that post in Harlan Creek and carried her bag to his wagon. Thomas Reed heard about the marriage before Sunday morning. The town had gathered for a church social when Thomas walked through the crowd and stopped before Abigail. "Miss Harper, I want a word with you." Ethan moved to her side. Marcus and James stood close behind them. "This whole town deserves to know what you have done," Thomas announced. "I filed a fair land claim, and you tried to destroy my name." "I reported false records and a paid county officer," Abigail replied. "If that destroyed your name, the fault belongs to you." Every conversation around them stopped. "You came here as nobody," Thomas said. "I rejected you, and you used another man's pity to make yourself important." Ethan's jaw tightened, but Abigail placed one hand gently against his arm. "Finish what you came to say, Thomas." He looked around and finally noticed the people watching him. Gertrude Hale stood with her arms folded. Cal Briggs stared at him without kindness. The Reverend's wife, Clara Voss, and several local ranchers had all heard how Frank Aldis had been tricked into signing a false statement. "You embarrassed me," Thomas said. "No. You rejected me because of my size. That was your choice. I could have lived with it. But when you learned I had value, you tried to claim me. When I refused, you tried to take Ethan's water and ruin his ranch." Thomas opened his mouth, but Abigail continued. "You brought false papers to a sick old man who could barely read them. You paid Gerald Potts to help you. I did not attack your opinion of me. I exposed your actions." The churchyard remained silent. Thomas searched the crowd for someone willing to defend him. No one moved. "I may have handled some matters badly," he said. It was not an apology, but everyone heard the defeat inside it. Thomas left the churchyard alone. 3 weeks later, he settled his hotel bill before sunrise and rode out of Harlan Creek. By noon, the town knew he was gone. By supper, people had already stopped speaking about him. Abigail did not celebrate. She returned to the ranch and continued preparing for her wedding. Clara Voss brought her a length of ivory cloth from Dodge City and helped make the dress. Mrs. Dolan took control of the food and claimed she was cooking for only 40 guests. though everyone knew she had prepared enough for twice that number. The wedding was held on the second Saturday of November. The morning was cold and clear, and the Kansas sky shone bright blue above the little church. Marcus walked Abigail down the aisle. His arm was stiff at first, but when they reached Ethan, he placed Abigail's hand into his father's with great care. James had written a speech. He stood before the guests, holding a folded piece of paper. "I was scared when Papa said a woman was coming to live with us," he began. "Then Abigail let me win at checkers. Except she says I won honestly. She taught me about the stars and how to lose without getting angry. I am glad she came, because Papa might have kept doing that thing with his jaw forever." The church filled with laughter. Even Marcus smiled. Ethan took Abigail's hands during the vows. His eyes held no doubt and no shame. He looked at her, as if every part of her belonged before him. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her softly, while their family and friends cheered. The celebration continued at the ranch. Marcus danced with Abigail once, wearing the serious face of a boy carrying out an important duty. James danced with anyone who would join him. Mrs. Dolan cried while denying every tear. Late that evening, Abigail escaped to the yard table with a cup of coffee. Ethan found her and sat beside her. "Are you happy?" he asked. Abigail looked at the warm house, the boys moving behind the windows, and the land she had helped save. "Yes," she said, "I am happy." Months later, the state investigation proved that Thomas and Gerald Potts had cheated several ranchers. Both men were sentenced to 14 months in prison. Abigail did not attend the trial. Her record spoke for her. By the following summer, people came from across the county to ask for her help with bills, land papers, and business records. Women gathered around the yard table while she taught them how to protect their homes and understand the papers men often told them not to worry about. One afternoon, Ethan watched from the doorway as the last visitors left. "You know what you built here?" he asked. "What we built," she corrected. He sat beside her and took her hand. Abigail had arrived in Harlan Creek with $43 and a body one man believed made her unworthy. She had not become thinner, quieter, or easier to control. The wrong man had looked at her size and walked away. The right man had seen her strength and stepped forward. For the first time in her life, Abigail Harper Walker felt exactly the right size.